Feeling the sit bones into the ground. Feel the crown making its way up towards the sky. Relax the shoulders back and down. Lift the heart. Lift the crown. Pull the chin back, stacking the crown and the head on top of the neck, torso. Inhale, feeling the chest and belly rise on the inhale breath. Exhale, feel the chest and belly fall on the exhale breath. Inhale, chest and belly rising. Exhale, chest and belly falling. Inhale, chest and belly rising. Exhale, chest and belly falling. Soften the shoulders, soften the face, lengthen the spine, chest and crown up, shoulders back. Feeling yourself just dropping into this place, into this moment, into this space and time, softening, allowing, and at the same time feeling kind of a sense of presence, a sense of strength. So you're balancing a little bit of that yin and yang here, right? So we feel this sense of landing, being here, being strong, being present. And at the same time, the feeling of just softening, of letting go, of there's nothing else I need to be doing. Relaxing, letting go. Letting go of the thoughts, letting go of the worries, letting go of the tensions. Landing here in this space. Chest and belly rising. Chest and belly falling. Chest and belly rising. Chest and belly falling, softening the shoulders, softening the face, letting that breath begin to elongate a little bit without any stress or strain. Just noticing the breath as it flows in and out like a steady stream, like oil pouring from a lamp. Maybe engaging a little bit of ujjayi, a little constriction at the back of the throat. Just again, feeling ourselves landing here more and more, a sense of kind of groundedness, a sense of being, not doing, but being, a human being. Turn your right palm up and come into Gyan Mudra, index finger to thumb. I'm going to move towards meditation into being, diving further into this sense of being. You're going to take your left hand, create like a kind of flat palm, and bring it 6 inches in front of your heart center. Pull your shoulders back. Pull your chin back. Lengthen up to the crown. We're going to bring the hand towards the chest about 2 inches and chant I am. Then we're going to bring the hand out about 10 to 12 inches away from the chest and say I am again. And then we're going to inhale slowly as we bring the hand back in. Exhale. I am. I am. I am. I am. We're going to continue with this mantra and this movement of the hand. And when you bring the hand into the heart center, you're going to focus on the I aspect. The emphasis is on the I. And as we bring our hand back out away from us, we're going to focus on the M. So a little more emphasis on the M. This is connecting our finite self, the I, with our infinite self, the M. Connecting that finite self, the I, with that infinite self, the M. So bringing that hand back into 6 inches away, pull the shoulders, pull the chin. The eyes are just slightly open, so you're going to see the hand gently moving back and forth. Crown up, shoulders back, sitting up nice and tall. I am. 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 few more. I am. 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 Holding here, inhale. Hold the breath. Chin lock, root lock, pull up. Exhale, releasing your left hand down, Gyan Mudra. Onto your left knee, pull the shoulders and chin back, crown up. And just soften now into this. Letting go. Allowing. Opening. A yogi cultivates the relationship between the finite sense of the self and the infinite sense of the self. The mind often forgets this relationship when it becomes attached to a particular emotion or object that it wants to keep. One of the important habits of the yogi instills in the mind is the ability to break the trance of attachment by shifting to the perspective of infinity. This is also the perspective of being. You exist before the objects you collect and even before the body that you use. It is very powerful and effective to remind the mind of your true identity with your infinite being. Without this awareness, then philosophy, ethics, and spirituality will reduce to ritual participation in the good. But the yogi seeks to participate in life with authenticity and wholeness. Slowly opening your eyes. And just again, coming back into this space, kind of staying in between, right? We're kind of in that meditation space. We're in that soft space. We're in that present space. But we're just opening up a little bit more, taking in the external as well. You know, in the Shambhala meditation lineage, they meditate with their eyes open. And that's to kind of, again, not to completely, you want to be able to bring this space in to our external reality. It's not a complete escape, right? There's times when complete retreat are really can be very helpful and rejuvenating. And at other times we want to bring that meditative energy, that sattvic energy that we call in yoga, that sort of higher state of vibration. And we want to bring it in to the external as well, where we're practicing being that beacon, being that light, and at the same time being part of. And so that's really what this space is all about, that what we're trying to create here with our weekly meditations and darshans is that kind of open space of inquiry, of exploration, of possibility, right? So it becomes less of an intellectual exercise. There's obviously an aspect of that to this, but more of really a spiritual exercise and an energetic exercise. How can I use my meditation practices to open myself up to a new way of seeing, a new way of being, a new reality, you know? And what's really kind of funny or even ironic about that is the tangible reality is not necessarily any different, right? The storm can still be passing, right? But our experience of reality can be quite different, right? And so it's how do we dance in that place for ourselves, and then also show the possibility to others. And so again, it's a practice, and we fall in and out of it. But really, my intention with these sessions is to focus our attention on that kind of experience. It's a practice, and so here we are. And thank you, and I hope that meditation was nice for you, and kind of, again, that balance of I am this physical form, but I am also this infinite reality as well, connecting those two polarities, those two truths in awareness. And so we'll see how it goes, and see what it opens up for us. So we're continuing with our journey through the yamas and niyamas. We haven't gotten too far yet, but that's okay, because what else are we going to do, right? Ram Dass once said that once we realize that enlightenment is possible, that liberation is possible, then what else are we going to do, right? Like, what are we going to spend our time on, And so it's like, it doesn't matter how long it takes, and to be honest with you, according to the the yogic folklore, it's lifetimes. So, so we're not in any hurry. We got plenty of time, and so however long it takes is what it takes. And we're not in any hurry to go anywhere. But on the other hand, obviously as a group here, the feedback of how long we want to spend on one area or another area, or again, what our interests are, we're certainly open to that inquiry and that exploration. So we'll see where it takes us today. We're still on Ahimsa. My intention is to kind of go through Ahimsa today and then move on to Satya the next week, and we'll just see where this takes us. So I don't know how many of you have the book. It really doesn't matter. As I said before, I think it's helpful in this inquiry to have some reference to the yamas and the niyamas. And I've mentioned again, there's quite a few resources online for that as well, just so that you kind of have a picture of the roadmap of where we're going. So again, you don't need to have this book, but there's tons of stuff out there. And it just gives you a kind of like, okay, here's the roadmap. And when we're referring to the roadmap, you kind of know where we are. We're still at the very beginning, which is Ahimsa. And I'd like to just kind of spend today sort of going through at least her breakdown of Ahimsa. There's interpretations galore out there of what Ahimsa, nonviolence, loving kindness means, how we're supposed to apply it, how we're supposed to practice it. But I do think her interpretation, Deborah Adele's, is good. So it's just a starting point, and you may have read something else or explored something else, and we can always add that in. We can always bring that up and explore that as well. This is just a framework that is, I think, a reasonably good one. So we're going to use hers to begin with and just see, again, what other things come up. So I'm going to share a little bit from the book right now, but I also want to make sure today that we get your feedback and get you and answer any questions that you might have about Ahimsa and nonviolence and loving kindness, because, as I said last week, it's so essential, right? We're not going to make any progress with. It's kind of like learning arithmetic, right? You can't do mathematics without arithmetic, and eventually you have to do algebra, and then you do calculus and trigonometry. They build on each other. And if you don't get arithmetic and calculus, you can't do, or algebra, you can't do calculus, right? So Ahimsa is so sort of critical to the whole program of yoga and liberation, that if we don't get it pretty well, if we don't understand what they mean by it and how at least we can have some access to it, then when we try to do the other, even the next yama, right, when we go to Satya, the truth, we cannot genuinely practice the Satya without an Ahimsa practice. It'll fall apart almost immediately. So I want to try to reinforce as much as we can today what we mean by Ahimsa, how to access it, and what you can do in order to say some practice. So she has some pretty nice practices at the end of the book, or not the end of the book, at the end of the chapter on what we can do too. And we'll try to review those before we finish up today, so that you sort of have some idea of what you can do to specifically access Ahimsa, nonviolence, and loving kindness in your life. So she starts off with courage, which I find really interesting, that she chose courage as sort of her number one facet of the number one lesson of yoga. And I'm just going to tell you a brief story to kind of why I find this so interesting. And that's quite a long time ago. I mean, not long in the geological sense, but in my life, I was sitting with my dad, and we were having a discussion, which turned into like almost an argument, but not really. But about what was more of an important virtue, love or courage. And my dad was on, you can probably guess which side we were taking. My dad was on the side of courage, and I was on the side of love. And so we just had this really, it was a healthy debate really about the two things. And really, as I reflect upon that conversation, and as I reflected later, I realized there are really two sides of the same coin. You can't really have one without the other. They beget each other. And love gives us this ability to expand ourselves beyond our comfort zone, beyond what our familiarity. It makes us more magnanimous, more spacious, right? But courage is also the thing that overcomes our fear, and that it's our fear that really keeps us from loving. And so courage, the development of courage becomes this sort of crucial aspect of our ability to love. And so just even, I know that I've worked with some of you and just studying some of the stuff that has come up as we've danced, so to speak, right, with our evolution, and we'll get triggered, and maybe we'll feel insecure from that trigger. And when we feel insecure from that trigger, our tendency is to retreat back, is to say, oh, I'm out of here. I'm going away now. And maybe we come back, but maybe we don't. And I've had, you're all here, so I'm kind of preaching to the choir at the moment, but believe me, I've had dozens of students who like, that guy's crazy and I'm never talking to him again. And that's okay. That's where we all are in our dance and in our little, as I like to say, karmic, dharmic journey. But what I have to say, like, I appreciate those ones that kind of keep saying, like, let me sort of expand, let me add this too, let me soften around this thing, because what we are really trying to do is create a space of love together, a space where we can love each other, ourselves and each other, genuinely and authentically. And what that often takes is us to let go of some egoic notion of how that's supposed to show up. And when we can do that, we sort of fall back into that space of love that we don't have to. It's beautiful because we don't have to do anything. We often talk about love being a lot of work. Like, I've got to work at it. I've got to compromise. I've got to do all these things to make love work. But actually, love isn't like that. Love is, I don't believe, love is there all the time. And all we have to do is let go of our preconceived notions of how it's supposed to show up and what I'm supposed to do and what the other person's supposed to do. That whole, if you love me, you should, when you're in that place, you're not in love, you're in an egoic notion of relationship. Okay, so that's an important distinction, right? So the courageous part is, how can I let go of my preconceived notions of relationship or this relationship or whatever it is, so that I can let go and fall back into love. I don't have to do anything. It's like going to fall back into that divine connection that I have with this person. And I think I've mentioned to you, and I've certainly mentioned in my class, like if you discover somebody, you find somebody in your life who you feel a genuine connection with, right? And you sort of know they have a genuine connection with you. It could be anybody, right? It doesn't have to be your primary partner. It can be any place. You just feel like, okay, there's a genuine connection here. That sort of almost feeling like we've met in some other lifetime or something. And here we are again, right? It's like, oh, okay, hello, good to see you again. And, but here's the caveat. They trigger your stuff, right? So something about them right? Well, that's the gift. The gift is that you have this genuine connection and they trigger your stuff. And then that becomes a yogic Ahimsa opportunity. How can I keep softening around those triggers, keep letting go, because the triggers are really just like a resistance, and they're some storyline. They're not fitting into my storyline in some way. That doesn't mean like, listen, there are some people out there who are who are abusive, and they do that because of their own deep-seated wounds. And then we need to go through this whole thing of maybe why am I so attracted to that? That has usually to do with our own deep-seated wounds, and that person is then reflecting that back to us in some way. So again, even there, it can become this incredible opportunity for growth. And the courage in that case becomes, how do I heal that part of myself so that I can let go of this person, so I can bless them and let them go on their way, and I can bless myself and let me go on my way. So the dance of love isn't always, oh, we're going to be together all the time. It's really about how do we use our relationships to continue to grow and to liberate. And sometimes there's a lot of there's a coming together and a separation. Sometimes it is like we're going to keep walking together in some parallel way, but often if it's really a spiritual path, it's going to be a huge amount of growth. Like there's always some growth, it's always some change, there's always some ebbing and flowing. The relationships are going to go like this, and then they may come back together, and sometimes they're going to go like this, and then they just keep going like that, right? They go, you start moving off onto some other plane. But sometimes if we're fortunate and we're able to keep opening to the possibilities, there'll be this kind of really lovely back and forth, ebb and flow. And maybe if the few relationships that I've had in my life like that, and usually it's, if we're lucky, it's a handful. If we keep working on ourselves, we might get more and more of those types of relationships, because our bandwidth for different types of relationships will continue to grow. But they become these sort of like golden threads, like the sutras, right, in our lives, these sort of relationships that give ourselves a lot of room to ebb and flow, to change, to grow, to go through challenging times, to go through good times. And so this is that first part of it, is courage, right? So it takes sort of recognizing that I have these preconceived notions of the way things are supposed to be. And while some of that stuff can be helpful, much of it is a hindrance to that love and deep connection that we truly want. And so just see if I can find something here. If we are to begin to address the fears, we need to know the difference between the fears that keep us alive and the fears that keep us from living. The first kind of fear is instinctual and built in us for survival. The second kind of fear is the fear of the unfamiliar. The unfamiliar can become an abundant place for our exploration once we realize this fear lives only in our imagination. It is only our minds that have created the turmoil in our gut and kept us hostage to the possibility of our own lives. Seeking out people and experiences we would normally avoid provides a fertile place to learn new things about ourselves and about life. Even those we might call enemies have much to teach us. People we have previously avoided will open up new ways of thinking and will give us pieces of ourselves. As we walk into our fears with both people and experiences, we will find that our sense of self has grown. Our view has expanded. The world suddenly looks like a bigger place, and we are more competent to navigate it. As we expand ourselves into these new places, our minds and hearts grow more open, and we have the less need to be violent. Thus, to create a life and world free of violence is first and foremost to find our own courage. So I think that's really quite well said, to find our own courage. And it's not, as he goes on, courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to be afraid without being paralyzed, to recognize it almost. Yeah, courage is found by facing our fears, the small ones, the big ones, the embarrassing ones, the really big, scary ones. To live the fullness that our own life is inviting us into, we often have to let ourselves be afraid and do it anyways. If we keep ourselves safe, how will our courage grow? And I'm reminded of like the first time we do anything new, there's usually fear, right? I can name off a whole bunch of things, that bring up that kind of like that uncertainty, that fear. We're all experiencing a lot of it right now, and with the pandemic, the economy, the election. If you're paying attention at all, there's going to be this unsettledness, right? So the question then becomes, how do we deal with that? And do we kind of, again, that tendency is to sort of shut down and to vilify, to sort of blame others for the problem, right? Which is a lot of wasted energy, And I'm guilty of that sometimes. It's really, how can we be, focus on that beacon, focus on that light, that other side, that I am this divine being, regardless of what's going on. And how can I focus my actions, my words, my intentions on that divinity? How can I see this time in many ways as a transformation, right? There is a transformation revelation going on. I kind of alluded to that in my newsletter a couple of days ago. And so our work here is to build up our capacity to be cohorts in that revelation, in that transformation, to help each other, to help ourselves, and to help our community go through this. And again, not in some necessarily grandiose way. It can just be the way we I got my cup of coffee today from my local coffee place down here, which I really appreciate, that they've just been able to stay in business, right, during all this. And it's just the way you can treat the people who are there, right? And you treat them with kindness, compassion, gratitude. Gratitude's a huge practice to get through challenging times. And that changes the vibration, right? That changes the whole energy. The energy that you give gets reflected back, and that you build on that. And so it's just being really mindful of the energy that we're bringing to our interactions, and just being really careful of how much time we spend nurturing the negative, right? So what I mean by that, I think I talked about how much time do we pay attention to the news? How much time do we talk about the news? All that sort of stuff is it's not that it's unimportant, but it's also a huge distraction. And it's also not really being with our own self and our own fears and our own feelings. And how can I actually be and spend time in that place with ahimsa, with compassion? I want to stop for a second
because I've managed to ramble on here for 15, 20 minutes, and just see where you guys are at with this exploration of ahimsa, with this exploration of loving kindness and nonviolence. And particularly if you have any questions of the group or of me, I want to make sure that we get to some of those. So does anybody want to chime in with any thought or question, insight that they've had about this practice? You have to unmute yourself, by the way, if you're going to speak.
It's Clarice.
Clarice.
Yeah. I love the walking through your fears, rather than run from them, of course. And, I've made those attempts in my life. And I realize the consequences have never been growth. They've been stagnation. That one. And of course, I like how you or she as well talked about the gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
That's as soon as I begin to get a sinking thought, if I can find 5 things, simple things that I'm grateful for, it turns me around pretty fast. And I love that practice. But another one that I have always worked on and continue to work on is to not pick up what doesn't belong to me.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm seeing something out there that I don't like how it's going down, why don't they see it the way I see it? What's wrong with them? I have to say, stop, stop, stop. Let it be. It's not my problem. And that's one that, as long as I've worked on it, yes, there's progress, but it will pop up again and again. And I just think it's where my mind is like a default. It's where my mind has been conditioned to go. So I'm working pretty hard to change that. And I'm hoping, this practice will help. That's one.
Right.
Thank you.
That's beautiful, Clarice. I really, really appreciate that sharing. I think there's a couple things to just look at real quickly there, and then we'll move on to someone else to share. Is that, for one, we have to cut ourselves a little bit of slack because our minds are designed to be vigilant, right? So we evolved in much more exposed environments, nomadic tribes, basically, right? And the life of nomadic tribes was pretty difficult and scary compared to our lives right now, even with all that's going on, right? And so we developed a real diligence to look out for danger. But what's happened with that that wiring in our mind is we pick up on things like what you just said, which is disagreements, or somebody's doing something different than the way, I would like it to be. And our mind processes it the same way is actually a danger. Like this is a egoic danger to myself, that this person sees the world through a different lens. So we react as though this is something I have to either fight or flight. I have to either fight this thing and defeat it, or I have to run away from it and get away from it because it's dangerous to me. I mean, so that part of our literally limbic mind is reacting and sending out chemicals and stuff like that into our brain that gets us kind of worked up like that. And so the practice in many ways becomes, and gratitude is perfect because gratitude sends different chemicals, the GABA and the serotonin chemicals, into our brain and gives us a sense of okayness, right? All right. And so if we can actually focus on our breath, this is why they say take 2 or 3 deep breaths when you're feeling a little agitated, right? That sends the more positive, healing parasympathetic chemicals through our nervous system and gets us to sort of say, this isn't a fight or flight situation. This is just one in which not completely comfortable, and I can build a capacity for being not completely comfortable. And so that's I think really, but also being compassionate with the self, that yes, we still get triggered. We still, the more we have vested in someone who, being like, this is why our family members can drive us so crazy sometimes, because we really want our family members to sort of see life the way we see it. It has to do, again, with our own kind of sense of validation and affirmation. The more we can get worked up by their perspective. And so, we keep remembering that our tendency to get triggered is actually an opportunity to recenter. And so thank you for that sharing. Anyone else like to share something about this teaching that has come up for them? Feel free to just unmute yourself and chime in. No, everybody's pretty quiet. Okay. So we can continue on a little bit with some of the other aspects that she brings up. So she goes from some courage into balance, and creating balance in our lives, right? So we've talked a lot about this over the course of time too, between the sort of the doingness of being human and the beingness, right? And I like to know we're called human beings for a reason, right? That we're here in many ways to enjoy ourselves. And I wrote down a note here that I really liked. And I'm not exactly sure what page. I guess I got this off of page 31. I'm just going to look at the contents of this for a second. But I really love this line here. Oh yeah, okay. So this has to do with, she says here, those who know me report that I am easy and delightful to be with, right? I'm taking this a little out of context, but I love that line. I said, am I easy and delightful to be with? Now, let's ask ourselves that, okay? And just try to honestly answer it. Am I easy and delightful to be with, right? And, if we're honest with that, we're like, sometimes, once in a while, and so, and why is that we're not easy and delightful to be with, maybe more often or as much as we would like? And it's probably because we're out of balance, right? We're out of balance in some way. We're overly focusing on our to-do list, our to-get list, and our relationship to those to-do lists and to-get lists. Am I okay based on the expectations that I've set up for myself based on where I'm supposed to be going and what I'm supposed to be doing? And that obviously is becoming even more difficult during this pandemic, right? And so all those expectations are still there, but the ability to get there is more elusive. And so rather than readjust our expectations, we just sort of drive ourselves crazy and work harder and double down. And then if we're doing that, am I easy and delightful to be with? Like, probably not, and I've succumbed to this recently, as I think I mentioned to some of you at the end of the summer, I was kind of like a burned out mess. And it was because I was trying too hard to meet my own expectations about kind of staying ahead of things with this virus and my online work and, teaching 7 days a week. And I was doing too much, and that was driven by my own fears and insecurities. And I got myself out of balance and boom, kind of, crashed for a little bit. And in the meantime, I realized I was not easy and delightful to be with. And so, which is okay. This is where you practice the Ahimsa again. This is when we're going to go into Satya, you'll see how my recognizing that with sort of humor and lightness and compassion is so critical, because otherwise you just get into some, like, I'm going to beat myself up and indefinitely, kind of place. And as opposed to recognizing, okay, I'm unbalanced here. And what do I need to do to move myself back into balance? And a lot of it has to do not just with what am I physically doing, but what am those expectations, all right? How am I going to shift my expectations about myself in a way, or others, so that I can get into balance. So I'm not obsessing about, again, myself or someone else, and how am I going to get more into that reality? And this is, again, where when we start to move into Satya and into truth, the Satya and Ahimsa work together really, really quite powerfully. And this is, a big part of the whole program, which we'll talk more about. So I like this part about balance. She then goes into powerlessness, which I found interesting that she looked at kind of powerlessness, but she had some pretty interesting insights into this feeling of being powerless. And this, again, has to do, this was an interesting idea with some of Pema Chodron's teachings that we studied a couple months ago, about how we kind of deal with our sense of powerlessness and what can we actually take in terms of our own kind of deep okayness, our own ability to make choices for ourselves. Whether, she goes into here, whether we respond with anger, withdrawal, frustration, or resignation, there isn't a way which our mind shuts down, as if we are riding a train through a dark tunnel and we can't see anything but darkness and anxiety. We've run out of options and we're feeling totally incompetent to deal with the challenge at hand. Ahimsa, or nonviolence, invites us to question the feeling of powerless rather than accept it. When we feel powerless, we have forgotten how much choice we really have. We have a choice to take action, and we have a choice to change the story we are telling ourselves about our powerlessness. Instead of sulking in the feeling of powerlessness, we can ask, what do I need to do right now to feel competent to handle this situation? During these times, we can also jumpstart ourselves by remembering past times when we successfully handled the challenging situation while remaining loving and whole, and then trying to find that feeling again. Here she talks about, I have found 3 ways of thinking that shift me out of feeling of powerlessness: practicing gratitude, trusting in the moment, and thinking about others. So there's again, just really, really good practices that we can do. I just want to make another comment about this powerlessness, and then again, open it up to you guys for a bit, is I think our sense of powerlessness is actually taught, okay? It's not, we especially, again, towards women, towards minorities, towards, all this sort of stuff, it's built into our culture that somebody else is going to grant us power in some way, rather than us knowing our own ability to make choices, to just choose what it is that we feel is right for us and move in that direction. We have to kind of constantly ask for permission, and is it okay, and affirmation. And this is all taught to us like as little kids, right? Because we sort of like asking for permission. The power is somewhere else. And again, the whole notion of white patriarchal supremacy relies on this whole thing of, and so, and I'm not just saying it's there. That's obviously a very poignant issue right now, but it's the notion of powerlessness is kind of built into our cultural system. And how do we recognize that, but also start to say, I know what is right for me, and I'm just going to move in that direction. I'm going to stop blaming that system in some way. I'm just going to start to move in the direction of my own power, regardless of the system. And then I'll, obviously have to find hopefully some cohorts who will travel that journey with me. I mean, we have to be somewhat careful about that, right? Because there are consequences at times, but sometimes we're not actually taking, as she sort of says here, owning our own power of choice and opinion, and we feel like we have to repress it all the time. And that's a form of violence when we're repressing ourselves. Obviously, when we're repressing it in others too. Anybody want to make any thoughts or comments about that? She says here, I excite myself with my incompetencies. She's quoting from somewhere. I think that's great. You know, I mean, it's not easy to do, to see where we're maybe not good at something, but see that it's a possibility for growth, you know. And again, I'm personally struggling with some of that right now, you know, dealing with some of this internet stuff and things like that. It's like I often feel this sense of incompetency, or that I'm not good enough in some way. But on the other hand, I can say, well, okay, you know, let me just figure this out. Let me figure, you know, be patient, be kind, practice ahimsa, but don't run away. I can either fight or flight it, right? I can try to overcome that primordial response, which is fight or flight. So I can either try to ignore it, which is the flight, right? And just pretend like it's not happening, that the world's not changing. Or I can just vilify it, like, oh, you know, the internet, you know, what a pain in the ass, you know. So, but neither one of those is really helpful. And so it's like, how can I just kindly keep moving in the direction that feels right, even if it feels uncomfortable? You know, it's like kind of like public speaking, right? When we get asked to do something that's public speech, most of us will feel this discomfort, but we'll also feel this kind of, this is right. Yeah, I have something to offer and I'm being asked to offer it. And yeah, it's the right thing to do, but it's also an uncomfortable thing to do, you know. And that's actually a huge, those moments where we recognize that juxtaposition between, yes, this feels like the right thing to do, but I'm scared to do it. That's almost always where we're supposed to go. Oh, almost always. So, you know, there's few exceptions to that. And so it becomes a guide, you know, is those moments. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add? I'm going to move towards the end of the chapter here, just to make sure we get in those ideas. Anyone? No? You guys are quiet today. All right. So, you know, I'm going to read that quote that I started this whole journey with again, and then I'm going to just kind of list off some of the ideas that she had about how to practice ahimsa for ourselves. So I just love this quote that she shared from Eddie Hillesum, who is a Holocaust survivor. And he said, ultimately, we have just one moral duty: to reclaim large areas of peace in ourselves, more and more peace, and to reflect it towards others. And the more peace there is in us, the more peace there will also be in our troubled world. And I think that in many ways, this encapsulates the spiritual path, that as we become the light, is the last lesson of the Buddha, right? The last thing he said to his followers who were all around him, the last teaching anyways, that he said, so he's dying and he knows he's dying, and the people around him know he's dying. He's dying of food poisoning, actually. When he's like 80, which in India back 2,000 years ago is like 120. It's like, you're really old, right? And he's dying, and he says, be the light, become the light, right? And so what he's trying to say is, work on this stuff for yourself, become peace, and that will change the world. You will move towards a place of equanimity, of balance, of balancing our issues of control with our issues of just letting go and how to let go. And so it's a kind of wonderful synopsis that if I can just focusing on this one lesson, ahimsa, and becoming peaceful within ourselves, we'll start to change everything else, and not just for ourselves, but for others. She goes on to talk about how you can do one thing daily that you wouldn't do normally. And if you're feeling brave, make that one thing that's something that scares you. So again, finding those things that maybe we know we should try, or we would like to try, or we have some interest in, or some, but also we have this resistance with, and just try them, right? Talk to somebody we don't usually talk to, or, just reach out, do something, learn a language, whatever. Just find those sort of things that kind of make us a little uncomfortable, but start to expand our possibilities. The next one she has is for balance. This week, guard your balance as you would your most precious resource. Don't find your balance from a place in your head of what it should look like. Instead, find guidance from the messages of your body. In this moment, do you need more sleep, more exercise? Do you need to eat differently? Do you need to pray? Do you need some variety in your life? Act on the messages of your body and explore what looks like for your week. So again, I think obviously that's why we are practicing yogis, is to sort of be able to tune in to our body and how it feels and what it needs. And this is where we start to change our diet and all this sort of stuff, not out of some intellectual notion of, oh, I should eat more vegetables. It's because we actually feel better when we eat more vegetables, and so it's not we listen to the body. And then the other thing I think is again, noticing your patience, noticing your tolerance level, your frustrations level. If those are going up, which mine were before, then you're out of balance, right? And so, noticing how you're feeling, that critical voice in your head that's either critical of yourself or others, if that's going up, then you're almost certainly getting out of balance, and some things need to change. Third was watch. I like this. So watch where you're running interference on others' lives. Are you a worrier, a fixer? Discern the difference between help and support. Notice what you might be avoiding in your own life because you are so interested in others. This is an awesome one, which again, I think I'm speaking to all women here today. You are so programmed to worry about other people that you forget yourself, and you forget to say, how am I today? How am I doing? What can I do for me to take care of myself and to be kind to myself? And it's so easy to focus our attention outwards. And she has a good quote in here about how worrying itself is a form of violence. So if we're worrying about somebody, we're sending out a lot of negative energy in their direction, or sending it back on ourselves. Worrying is not a productive use of time. And so it's, recognizing when we're spending a lot of time externally focused, especially on stuff that we have no control over, or that isn't really constructive, like we're not really helping or supporting. And she talks about this as helping is more of a one-upmanship, like you think you know better, as opposed to how can I support this person, which sometimes is just listening or being with somebody while they're going through what they're going through, not to actually change anything. This is a great act of kindness. And the last part is pretend you are complete. There is no need to expect anything from yourself, or to criticize or judge or change anything about you. No need to compete with anyone. No need to be more than you are or less than you are. Note your experience. Notice how much pleasure, kindness, and patience you can allow yourself to have with yourself. So I love that we're ending this little chapter where we really began, which is this notion of when we tend to think about being loving and kind and nonviolence, we tend to say, it's like the golden rule, do unto others as you wish them to do unto you. The golden rule is nice, but it has a problem with it. And that's that most of us are super not so nice to ourselves. And so actually that's a little bit of a quandary when we say, like, okay, yeah, please do unto me as I do unto myself, because we're not that nice to ourselves. And so, I'm just using that as a generalization. So then the whole thing spins out of control, and so now nobody's really nice to anybody else. What this is saying here, and what Ahimsa is saying, is start with yourself and just thinking about how you can be more patient, more kind, more loving. Ultimately, we're becoming the space of love, so that we're not seeking love outside. We're not saying, oh, how can I get people to love me and adore me and all this sort of stuff. We are it. And then if people want to join us in that place, great. And if they don't want to join us in that place, great. And we're still it. And so, but we're not going to get it by proving ourselves worthy of love. You know, we get it by cultivating love, nurturing love within us, and then inviting people into it, and then, you know, being able to be loving and kind to others, but without that kind of that neediness. Oh, aren't you going to affirm me? Aren't you going to love me? You know, and we've talked a lot about that difference between being nice and kind in order to fit in and get the affirmation that we want back, as opposed to being nice and kind and loving because we are it, and it just is overflowing, and it's just, how can I share that with you, regardless of what you do with it? You can do anything you want with it. And that's when we know we're starting to get free. We're starting to get liberated, is when we're moving in that direction. And again, it's not like know it in some egoic, you know, it doesn't matter. It takes whatever time it takes. We just start to feel more easeful. We become an ease and delight to be with ourselves. We sit out on our deck, our porch, with the sunshine, having a cup of tea, and we're completely like at ease. Like, how great are those moments, right? Those moments are like gold, and we can start to have more and more of those moments when we start practicing ahimsa with ourselves. All right, my friends, I want to thank you all so much for being on this journey with me. So we're going to go to the next chapter next week. We'll obviously be referring to ahimsa, going into satya, which is amazing. You know, these the first yamas are the kind of the bulk work of the spiritual practice. And we'll go into, so they sort of carry us into the other ones, and then they kind of wrap up with one more at the end that's also kind of a key to the whole practice as well. So I look forward to continuing on this journey with you. I'm going to close the practice out right now, and then turn off the video, and we'll, but I'll still be on for a few minutes if anyone wants to say hello. So just bringing your hands together at your heart center, pull your shoulders back, lengthen up to the crown, take a deep inhale. Exhale, let it go with a sigh. Inhale. All that is sacred and divine in me bows to you.